welcome back again, and in this video I am going to be recreating this mini painting with a complementary scheme with watercolor, and I'll be talking about watercolor, some brief tips of starting away with watercolor. Firstly, I'll be talking about the materials. Well, I won't get into the details in this video, but in the next videos I will just separate these topics and go into the details. So let's get right into it. So firstly, when you're starting with watercolor, the first thing that you are going to buy the material besides the colors is the brushes. So I'm sorry, are the brushes, and these brushes are going to confuse you too much because there are so many types of brushes to choose from. There are different shapes of brushes and different um, brushes with different types of hair. I mean, the tip of the brushes, there can be synthetic, that is the felt brushes, or natural hair brushes like squirrel hair and hairstyle brushes and all that. So basically, if you are going to experiment and want to see which kind of brush you like, which shape of brush rather, you can just buy a cheap brush and cheap brush of different shapes and experiment them and decide which type or which shape of brush you're needing the most, because you won't need all of them. You will hardly need 2 or 3, maybe the round one and the flat one, which are mostly used. Depending on your art style, you may need the other things, but that is what you'll be choosing when you're experimenting them. So you can experiment that with your with the cheap ones, and then spend whatever money you want on the brushes you actually need. And so basically, and hair brushes, like natural hair brushes like squirrel hair and horse tail or whatever, they cost a lot. So don't waste your money on that right away. You can experiment, learn in the synthetic brushes. The synthetic brushes are pretty good. They're like pretty good. Even I use them and it's not a problem. So that's about brushes, and next I want to tell you about papers. So whenever you are doing watercolor is quite different from any other medium. Like, it's not inking, because you need water and not every paper can is not compatible with water. So you should choose watercolor paper or buy watercolor paper for yourself. If it's for practicing, if it's not for professional purpose, you can find some cheap watercolor paper. But the one of the most important thing about watercolor paper is that you should find a paper which is at least 300 GSM, that is the weightage of the paper, or above 300 GSM, not below that, because the water will not the paper will not be able to carry the water, and the paper will start pulling together the water, and it will get folded. Next, the colors. Well, I use camel watercolors, and you can use Favor Castle and any other brand that you want to find. Well, I don't really have much to say about colors right now, if we are talking about the type of color actually. Then is the water, which is the main ingredient basically in our watercolor. Well, it is very much important to use the water properly when you are doing watercolor, because you can use a lot amount of water just to make unsaturated a thin layer of color when you want to show light, or just increase the transparency. Watercolor, unlike acrylic and gouache, or oil painting does not need white color to show highlights or light. Watercolor, you can use the help of water, the transparency, to do that. We'll get into details of this about the transparency all in my later videos. So yeah, that's one thing. And mentioning watercolor, I need to say that using a tissue paper like I am using here every now and then is the most helpful thing to manage the amount of water you want to use without dirtying your dress and the surrounding. So tissue papers are good. They soak the amount of water you want to soak, and you needn't make your dress dirty, which I used to do a lot back when I was small. And then well, this is not really very much a tip that I can talk about briefly, but I'll just tell it anyway. That is using the negative space and transparency of the watercolor, which is very, very important. And that is what you can manage with whites. So it's always better to start watercolor by layers, by putting on a very transparent layer, and over that putting on darker layers above it, because it is not very convenient to highlight with watercolor, like with white watercolor, or because white is like watercolor is very transparent, and highlighting doesn't really work that way unless you're using a white gel pen or something like that, a white ink or anything. But if you're wanting to give a pure watercolor effect, it is just best to using layers. So that's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you think this recreated painting is good enough, give it a thumbs up. And if you find the tips helpful, and just stick around for the upcoming watercolor videos, subscribe, and you can check out my artworks just by following me on Instagram. The Instagram handles in the description below. Well, that's all. Well, see you next time. Bye.